Do you know what's most fascinating? The most transformative phrases, those that truly have the power to heal, motivate, and change perspectives, aren't the ones we typically hear in consultations. They're simple phrases, but loaded with profound wisdom that most professionals don't share because they think they're too simple or because they simply don't realize their impact. Hello, I'm Marian Rojas Estapé, and today I want to share with you something that can transform your life in ways you can't imagine. During my years as a psychiatrist and after working with thousands of patients, I've discovered that there's extraordinary power in the words we say to ourselves and to others. Today, we're going to break that silence. I'm going to reveal the 9 most powerful phrases I've seen transform lives. Phrases that go straight to the heart of what we really need to hear. And I assure you that by the time you finish watching this video, the way you understand the human mind and relate to yourself will have changed forever. So get comfortable, because what you are about to discover has the potential to become your most valuable tool for navigating life with greater serenity, purpose, and well-being. And your body keeps track of everything you haven't processed. This phrase contains a truth that revolutionized my understanding of psychosomatics. For years, I have seen patients come to my office with unexplained back pain, chronic digestive problems, and persistent muscle tension. And when we begin to explore their emotional world, we discover that the body is manifesting what the mind has failed to manage. Your body is much wiser than you think. Every unexpressed emotion, every unmourned grief, every unresolved conflict is stored somewhere in your body and remains there, creating tension, inflammation, and pain, waiting to be recognized and released. I remember Maria, a 45-year-old executive who came to see me for anxiety attacks. For months, she had been suffering from terrible cervical traction. Physical therapists gave her temporary relief, but the pain always returned. When we started working together, we discovered that she had been swallowing her frustration at work for years, clenching her jaw every time her boss belittled her, tensing her neck every time she had to smile when she felt furious inside. Her body kept a precise tally of every moment she had suppressed her truth. And it wasn't until she learned to recognize, name, and express these emotions in a healthy way that her body began to truly relax. This phrase reminds us that we are not just mind. We are a psychosomatic unit. When we honor our emotions, when we process them consciously, we not only heal our minds, but we free our bodies from a burden that it is not supposed to carry. The next time you feel a recurring physical discomfort, ask yourself, what emotion could be manifesting here? What do I need to process that my body is trying to communicate to me? And before I continue with the next sentence, if this content is resonating with you as much as it excites me to share it, I ask that you help me reach more people who can benefit from these tools. Like this video and subscribe to the channel, because when you share knowledge that can transform lives, you are participating in something much bigger than you and me. Each subscription means one more person will have access to tools for their emotional well-being. And that is something truly powerful. You don't need to be perfect to be valuable. This phrase disarms one of the most destructive mechanisms of our modern society, perfectionism. In my practice, I have seen how this limiting belief destroys the self-esteem of brilliant, capable, extraordinary people who constantly feel inadequate because they fail to reach impossible standards. Perfectionism is not the pursuit of excellence. It is the fear of failure disguised as ambition. It is the terror of being rejected, abandoned, or considered insufficient if we do not meet unrealistic expectations. And the most tragic thing is that these expectations are often not even ours. They are messages internalized since childhood, social pressures, and constant comparisons with others. I have etched in my mind the image of Laura, a 28-year-old artist who had stopped painting because nothing she created seemed good enough to her. She had turned her passion into a source of constant suffering. In one of our sessions, I asked her, do you know any child who stopped drawing because their drawing wasn't perfect? The question completely disarmed her. Children create from a place of joy, from pure expression, without the filter of judgment. At some point, we learn that our worth depends on our performance, and that's where we begin to lose ourselves. Your value as a human being is non-negotiable. It doesn't depend on your achievements, your productivity. Whether you're having a good or bad day, whether you make mistakes or not, you are valuable for the simple fact of existing, for being who you are, with your lights and shadows, with your strengths and your vulnerabilities. When you deeply internalize this truth, something magical happens. Paradoxically, you begin to function better because you act from a place of self-love instead of fear of rejection. You take healthy risks. You allow yourself to experiment, to fail, to learn. You stop wasting energy on destructive self-criticism and channel it towards genuine growth. The problem is not what happens to you, but the story you tell yourself about what happens to you. This phrase contains the essence of cognitive therapy and is perhaps one of the most liberating tools you can learn. We all face difficult circumstances, moments of crisis, situations beyond our control, but what determines our suffering is not the events themselves, but the interpretation we make of them. Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl expressed it masterfully. Between stimulus and response lies a space, and in that space lies our power to choose our response. In that response lies our growth and our freedom. Imagine that you lose your job. The objective fact is you no longer work at that company. But immediately, your mind begins to create a narrative around this fact. You can tell yourself, I am a failure. I will never find something better. My life is ruined. Or you can tell yourself, this is an opportunity to reevaluate what I really want, to explore new possibilities, to grow in ways I had not considered before. Which do you think will generate less suffering and more possibilities for constructive action? I'm not talking about naive, positive thinking. It's not about denying reality or minimizing genuine pain. It's about recognizing that you have power over the meaning you give to your experiences. And that power is extraordinary. I remember Miguel, an entrepreneur who had lost his business during an economic crisis, coming to my office devastated, convinced that he was a loser who had ruined his family. We worked for months to help him see that what he had been through was a common experience in the business world, that it did not define his worth as a person, and that the skills he had developed over the years were still intact. When he managed to change his internal narrative, he not only regained his self-esteem, he used the experience as a springboard to create something even better. The external situation did not change retroactively, but he was completely transformed. The next time you find yourself suffering, ask yourself, what story am I telling myself about this situation? Is this interpretation helping or limiting me? What other perspectives might I consider? Your emotions are information, not commands. This distinction has been revolutionary for many of my patients. We live in a culture that has taught us to fear certain emotions, especially the ones we consider negative: sadness, anger, fear, anxiety. But here's the big secret that changes everything. Emotions aren't the enemy. They're messengers. Every emotion you experience is trying to communicate something important to you about your situation, your needs, your values, your boundaries. Anxiety tells you that something needs your attention, or that you're moving away from your comfort zone. Sadness tells you that you've lost something valuable, or that you need time to process a change. Anger tells you that a boundary has been crossed, or that something important to you is being threatened. The problem arises when we confuse emotion with action. Feeling anger doesn't mean you have to scream or lash out. Feeling fear doesn't mean you have to run away. Feeling sadness doesn't mean you have to freeze. Emotions give you information. You decide what to do with it. Imagine the power you have when you understand this. You are not a victim of your emotions. You are the conscious recipient of valuable information. You can feel fear and still act courageously. You can feel sadness and still be present for those you love. You can feel anger and still respond with wisdom. The next time you experience an intense emotion, pause for a moment and ask yourself, what information is this emotion giving me? What do I need to know or attend to? Then, from a place of awareness, decide how you want to respond. What you deny in yourself, you attract in others. This phrase touches on one of the most fascinating and at the same time most uncomfortable aspects of the human psyche: projection. Karam explained it brilliantly. Everything we have not integrated about ourselves, we see magnified in others. And this creates a magnetic attraction or repulsion. Have you ever found that there are people who deeply irritate you for no apparent reason, or that you end up repeatedly attracting the same type of toxic relationships? It is no coincidence. Many times, what bothers us the most about others is precisely what we have repressed or denied about ourselves. If you deny your ability to be selfish, you will attract extremely selfish people who will force you to confront that part of yourself. If you deny your vulnerability, you'll be magnetically drawn to people who will put you in situations where you have no choice but to be vulnerable. If you deny your need for control, controlling people will appear in your life who will show you what it feels like to be on the other side. This is not cosmic masochism. It is you seeking integrity, completeness. What Jung called individuation is precisely this process of acknowledging, accepting, and integrating all parts of ourselves, even those we prefer to keep in the shadows. I remember Elena, a woman who prided herself on always being the good one, the understanding one, the one who never gets angry. But she consistently ended relationships with aggressive, domineering men who were emotionally abusive. At first, she saw herself as a victim of bad luck in love. But when we began to explore more deeply, we discovered that she had completely denied her own capacity for anger, for firm boundaries, for saying no. She was bringing in people who would express the aggression she had repressed. It wasn't until she learned to connect with her own inner strength, with her ability to set boundaries, with her right to get angry when necessary, that she began to bring more balanced relationships into being. This phrase invites us to honest self-exploration. Instead of constantly judging others, we can ask ourselves, what is this person teaching me about myself? What aspect of myself am I denying that needs to be acknowledged and integrated? It's not about blaming yourself for the difficult situations you experience, but about taking responsibility for your personal growth and using each relationship as an opportunity to get to know yourself more deeply. You can't heal what you can't feel. In our society, we have developed an extraordinary ability to disconnect from our emotions. We live in our heads, analyzing, rationalizing, explaining, but often avoiding direct contact with what is really happening in our emotional world. This disconnection has an evolutionary purpose. When something is too painful, our nervous system activates protective mechanisms. We dissociate, we numb ourselves, we create layers of defenses so as not to feel what we consider unbearable. It's a remarkable short-term survival strategy. But here's the problem. What is unfelt cannot be processed. And what is unprocessed remains active in our system, influencing our decisions, our relationships, our well-being, often in unconscious ways. I've had patients tell me, I'm over it, referring to past traumas or losses. But their bodies tell a different story. They have panic attacks for no reason, develop addiction, sabotage relationships, experience unexplained depressions. Their minds have moved on from the experience, but their emotional systems are still waiting for attention and care. Andres came to me because he couldn't commit to relationships. He was an intelligent, successful man who had a clear understanding of why relationships weren't working for him. He had sophisticated theories about incompatibility, lack of intellectual connection, differences in values. But when we began to explore his emotional history, we discovered that he hadn't cried in decades. His father had died when he was 12, and since then he had unconsciously decided that emotions were dangerous, that feeling pain was a weakness he couldn't afford. She had built an emotional wall so strong and impenetrable that it not only kept out pain, but also joy, love, and genuine intimacy. It wasn't until she allowed herself to feel that old loss, to cry those tears that had been held back for decades, that she could begin to open her heart to the possibility of real love. Healing requires courage, the courage to let down our defenses, to feel what we had decided was too much. But when we allow ourselves this conscious vulnerability, when we compassionately accompany our most difficult emotions, something extraordinary happens. We discover that we are much more resilient than we realized. Your comfort zone is also your stuck zone. This phrase confronts one of the most interesting paradoxes of the human experience, or the very thing that gives us security can also become our prison. The comfort zone, the psychological space where we feel safe, we're competent, in control is important and necessary. We all need spaces of stability and predictability. But here's what I've observed in thousands of hours of therapy. When our comfort zone becomes too small, when we stop exposing ourselves to experiences that challenge us, that grow us, that teach us something new about ourselves and the world, we begin to die a little bit every day. Personal growth, by definition, requires discomfort. It requires facing the unknown, tolerating uncertainty, developing new skills, confronting fears. Every time we choose comfort over growth, we impoverish ourselves as human beings. Martha was a 40-year-old accountant who had been in the same job for 18 years, in the same routine, with the same conversations, the same habits. She felt secure, but deeply empty. One day she told me, "I feel like I'm alive, but I'm not living." She had confused security with fulfillment. Her comfort zone had become a zone of stagnation. There was no risk, but there was no vitality either. There were no failures, but there were no meaningful triumphs either. There was no pain, but there was no authentic joy either. The process of stepping out of your comfort zone was gradual and transformative. It started with small experiments, taking a painting class, traveling alone for the first time, speaking up at work meetings. Each small step outside the familiar gave her back a little piece of her soul. I'm not talking about dramatic or irresponsible changes. It's not about abandoning everything and taking the plunge. It's about consciously expanding the boundaries of what's possible, keeping alive that flame of curiosity and adventure that we all carry within. Your comfort zone should be like a home, a place where you return to rest and recover, but from which you also leave to explore the world. If your home becomes your only reality, no matter how comfortable it is, it becomes your prison. Ask yourself, when was the last time you did something for the first time? When was the last time you challenged yourself in a constructive way? What small step could you take today to expand your comfort zone in a conscious and self-loving way? Anxiety always looks to the future, and depression to the past. Peace is in the present. This phrase encapsulates one of the most important keys to emotional balance. In my years of clinical experience, I have observed a consistent pattern. When my mind is stuck in the future, projecting catastrophes, anticipating dangers that may never happen, I experience anxiety. When it is stuck in the past, ruminating on mistakes, regretting what could have been different, I experience depression. But there is a place where neither anxiety nor depression can exist in the present. At this exact moment, right now, as you read these words, is there a real crisis that requires your immediate attention? Is there a tangible danger that is threatening your safety at this very moment? Most psychological suffering occurs when our minds travel through time. We project our fears onto uncertain future scenarios or get stuck in past hurts that can no longer be changed. In the meantime, real life is happening here and now, and we are missing out. David was an executive who came to my office suffering from severe panic attacks. His mind was a catastrophic scenario generating machine. What if I lose my job? What if my presentation goes badly? What if my company goes bankrupt? What if I can't pay the mortgage? Her nervous system was constantly firing, preparing for emergencies that existed only in her imagination. I taught her a simple yet powerful technique. Whenever she noticed her mind racing into the future, she would bring herself back to the present using her 5 senses. What can I see right now? What can I hear? What can I touch? This mindfulness practice not only calmed her anxiety, it gave her back access to her natural wisdom and her ability to make decisions from a place of clarity rather than fear. The present is the only place where you truly have power. You can change the past, no matter how much you ruminate on it. You can completely control the future, no matter how much you worry about it. Right now, you have real choices. Power of action, conscious responsiveness. This doesn't mean living without planning or ignoring the lessons of the past. It means using the present as your home base. Plan from the clarity of the moment. Learn from the past without getting caught up in it. Anticipate the future without getting lost in anxiety. Peace is not the absence of challenges. It is the ability to be present with what is without constantly running away to yesterday or tomorrow. And from that presence, You can respond to life with wisdom rather than reacting from fear or regret. You are not responsible for your first thought, but you are for your second. This last sentence contains perhaps the most practical key to emotional freedom. That first mental reaction, that first impulse, that first interpretation that arises in any situation is not completely under your control. It is the result of your programming, your history, your past experiences, your past experiences, your established neural patterns, But herein lies your real power. Once that first thought appears, you have the ability to observe it, evaluate it, and consciously choose what to do with it. You can feed it or let it pass. You can question its veracity or accept it as absolute truth. You can act on it or choose a more conscious response. This distinction is revolutionary because it frees you from the limiting belief that you are your thoughts. You are not. You are the observer of your thoughts. And from that position of conscious observer, you have the power of choice. Imagine someone doesn't return a message to you. Your first thought might be, he's ignoring me. He doesn't care about me. I did something wrong. That first thought is automatic. You didn't consciously choose it, but the second thought, that's where your power lies is, wait, I really know he's ignoring me. There could be other explanations. He could be busy. He's lost his phone. He's dealing with some crisis. The quality of your emotional life depends enormously on how consciously you are in that space between the first and second thought. It's in that space that you can choose to respond from wisdom rather than react from automatic patterns. Lucia was a chronic perfectionist whose first thoughts in any situation were always critical and catastrophic. I've ruined everything. I'm a disaster. I'm never going to be good enough. These thoughts arose automatically as conditioned reflexes. We worked for months to develop her ability to observe these thoughts without completely identifying with them. She learned to create that sacred space between the first and second thoughts where she could ask herself, is this really true? Is this thought helping me? What more compassionate and realistic perspective could I choose? Over time, even though her first thoughts were still sometimes critical, she developed the skill of not letting them drag her down. She became the conscious editor of her own mental narrative. This practice requires patience and self-compassion. It's not about judging yourself for having certain types of thoughts, but about gradually developing your ability to respond consciously rather than react automatically. Remember, you are not responsible for the first thought that arises, but you have complete responsibility and power over the second. These 9 phrases that we've explored together are not just theoretical concepts. They are practical tools that can transform your relationship with yourself and with life. Each one contains years of clinical wisdom condensed into simple yet profound words. I ask you now, and I invite you to reflect with me. Which of these phrases resonated most deeply with you? Which one do you feel you needed to hear at this moment in your life? More importantly, how do these truths manifest in your day-to-day life? You may recognize yourself in the person who carries the weight of unprocessed emotions in their body. Or perhaps you are the one who demands constant perfection. Maybe you have been living on autopilot based on your first thoughts, or perhaps you have been carrying resentments for years that only hurt you. I would love to hear about your experience. In the comments, tell me which of these phrases impacted you the most and how you plan to apply them in your life. Because when we share our reflections and experiences, we create a community of growth where we all learn from each other. Your story matters, your process matters, and I am genuinely interested in accompanying you on this path of self-knowledge and growth. Remember that knowledge without action remains just information. I invite you to choose one of these phrases, the one that resonated with you the most, and make it your reflection partner this week. Observe how it appears in your daily life, how you can apply it to specific situations, and what changes, no matter how small, begin to generate in the way you relate to yourself and others. Real change happens in the small everyday moments, in those seemingly insignificant decisions to choose compassion over criticism, presence over mental escape, vulnerability over perfection, growth over comfort. And if this video has brought you value, if you feel that these tools could be useful to someone else in your life, please share it. Because when we share wisdom that can alleviate suffering and promote well-being, we are participating in something much bigger than ourselves. We are building a world where mental health care is a priority, where emotional well-being tools are available to everyone. Thank you for allowing me to join you on this journey of self-discovery. I'll see you in the next video.